About 18 months ago, I met up with three dear friends of mine from high school. It had been many, many years since I last saw them, so I was excited to catch up with them. We were close in high school, but our lives took different paths and we lost track of one another. There's always this expectation, of course, that the older we get, the more successful we'll be in all areas of our lives, and that everything will just get better and better as we age. Quickly, we realized that each of us was divorced and either was currently alone or in a second marriage or in a relationship. The discussion quickly turned towards who is really happier, those that are alone and do not have to deal with the ups and downs of relationships, or those that are in relationships. We have all had our share of heartaches. My dear friend explained to me how his wife left him for another man only months after his wedding. Obviously, there was an air of bitterness as we discussed relationship. I kept thinking about my meeting with my friends for several days, and it was just one of those nagging feelings inside. These are good guys, they're not unattractive, yet relationships have been a mystery. Now, I have been using advanced statistical analysis to improve companies' performance for almost 2 decades. I travel all over the world and help some of the biggest brands optimize their product offerings or their pricing strategy so they can succeed in the marketplace. The methodology by which I do all of that is called Conjoint Analysis. A few days after my meeting with my friends, a strange thought came to me. Could I use Conjoint Analysis to shed light and reveal the mystery of relationships? The fundamental principle of conjoint analysis, or more specifically, discrete choice analysis, is that consumers reveal their preferences as they make choices. And when we analyze the choice patterns of hundreds or even thousands of people, we're able to measure the value consumers place on the various components or attributes of products. Literally, conjoint analysis decomposes a product into its set of benefits and then quantifies the value of each benefit. Which component about this product is most valued, least valued? What are consumers willing to pay for a certain product or feature? Well, how about us people? Well, for people, there's certainly no willingness to pay, but there's certainly willingness to date. We too are made up of a list of attributes that people interacting with us judge us by. Some of us are tall, some of us are shorter, some of us make lots of money, some of us have average jobs, some of us are funny, some of us are dull. Which of these attributes is more important to land a date? I decided to put it to the test. I decided to construct a conjoint study to measure what it is about men that make women want to date them. I mean, who wouldn't want to put some science behind something that's puzzled men for tens or millions of years, or perhaps even more? So the first phase of the research, I collected a list of attributes that deemed relevant in women wanting to date a man. I've asked about 100 women what attributes they look for in men, and these were the top ones in no particular order: looks, physical attractiveness, height, employment, kindness, ambition, intelligence, and sense of humor, and actually confidence as well. So in order to set up a conjoint experiment correctly, I needed to create hypothetical men women could choose from. These men needed to vary in all of those attributes I just mentioned, but in a controllable way. So there needed to be short men, average height men, tall men, unemployed men, men that make low wages, average wages, high wages, millionaires, and the same different way across all the other attributes. In the conjoint analysis, normally we want to have progression in terms of preference. We can assume that low wages is better than unemployed, and average wage is better than low, tall is preferred over short. But with looks, how do we create this progression? One face may be attracted to some women and unattractive to others. So here I needed to be a little bit creative. I used one face and I made an obviously handsomer version of that face, skinnier with lush hair, and an obviously unattractive version of the same face. So it's really the same face, but we no longer have to worry about the bias that different faces may be very subjective. So this conjoint survey was given to 200 women across the country. Each of these women saw approximately 30 of these hypothetical men and made about 10 different choices each within the survey. The women not only saw what these men looked like, but also could see the description of how much money they made, whether the men were funny or boring, intelligent or dumb, or how tall they were, whether they were always very kind, sometimes kind, mostly rude, whether they were ambitious or couch potatoes, and so forth. These surveys were anonymous, and every effort was made to make sure that the 200 women were representative of the US in terms of geography, race, age, and marital status. The data then was analyzed, and so I'm standing here today to share the results of what men have been wondering about for millions of years. Now, these results actually have once been shared on YouTube and stirred quite a bit of controversy with very heated comments, mainly from men. So let's look at the results. In the next few minutes, I will be revealing the results using a term called preference, or more specifically, preference share. Conjoint analysis can be conducted with slightly different methodologies, one of which is a probabilistic approach, resulting in the probability that a certain combination of attributes would be selected out of a set of other combination. In other words, if you have a man with certain attributes, and this man is part of a group of other men with their own unique attributes, what's the probability that this specific man would be picked? To illustrate the findings, let's start with 3 completely identical men. They look exactly the same, and every attribute is exactly the same. Of course, it's easy to imagine that each of these guys would have equal chance of being picked by the ladies. None of the 3 guys has any edge over the other 2. Expressing equal chance out of 3 options mathematically, I would say that they have a 33% chance. Now, what if one of the attributes changed? Just for one of them. Let's say that the first man is shorter than the other 2. Let's say he is 5'4". Probabilistically, and as suspected, everything else held equal, this man has somewhat less of a chance of being picked. 1 in 5 now, or more accurately, 21% chance. Not surprising, height actually does matter. How about if one of the 3 men was more intelligent than the other 2? All else held equal. Surely intelligence should matter, and it does. 40% of the women would rather pick this man over the other 2. Okay, how about humor? Would women want to date someone who is funnier than the other two? Everything else equal. Turns out humor does matter. In fact, it seems to matter a bit more than intelligence did. 43% of women would rather pick the funnier guy. Okay, now let's talk about money, or rather employment. Does it matter if a man is employed? Actually, it is very important. If all else equal, one of these men were unemployed, less than 1 out of 10 women would care to date that man. And I think this is lesson number 1. If you struggle to find a date, perhaps it's because you don't have a job. Now, let's look at the flip side. Does it matter if you have a nice job? We'll call it better than average job. It actually does matter. All else held equal, the man with a better than average job would attract 44% of the women. And that's a nice increase in attractiveness, but certainly not overwhelming. What if all else being equal, the guy is a millionaire? Of course, he would become more attractive, but not as much as I expected. I expected that perhaps 80 to 90% of the women would pick the millionaire, whereas in reality, it was only 48%. Still, up to this point, wealth seems to be the most important attribute to get someone to date you. Actually, let me correct myself. Based on the data, the fact that someone has a job seems to be the most important characteristic. The fact that you have a great job, versus with great money, actually matters less than I expected. It doesn't seem to be a large factor. And I didn't say that it's not a factor, it's just not a deal breaker. Now let's talk about looks. How much do looks matter? What if, all else being equal, one of the three guys was very unattractive looking. Do women care? They actually do. This unattractive looking man would perhaps be picked maybe 1 out of 20 women. By 1 out of 20 women. The other 19 women would pick the other two guys. So far, up to this point, looks and employment seem to be the most important. So which one matters more, looks or money? Men often complain that women would date just about anyone for money. What if the one guy that was unattractive was actually a millionaire? Would that help his chances? Well, based on the data, women actually do care enough about looks that even being a millionaire wouldn't help. The unattractive man had a probability of 5% or 1 in 20. The same unattractive man as a millionaire has now a barely better chance of 7%. The answer is no, you cannot become a more attractive guy simply because you have a lot of money. Again, this is grand generalities. Of course, there will always be some people who would mainly care about money, but by and large, your chances would not improve a lot simply because of money. Now, one of the attributes we measured was being a kind and patient person. In the survey, women had the chance to choose among men of varying attributes, and the kindness attribute also varied. Sometimes men were always rude and impatient, sometimes they were sometimes rude and average kindness, or always kind and always patient. Just like other attributes we mentioned, kindness was analyzed, and the result was surprising to me, to say the least. All else held equal, the guy's personality trait was always kind and patient. 2/3 of the women would pick that guy. Being kind and patient, based on the study, was not only the most important attribute about a man, it was significantly more important than the other attributes: wealth, looks, sense of humor, intelligence. Here's how attractive kindness is. Even if you have a job that pays below the average, and the other two guys have average paying jobs, 53% of women would still pick you out of the three. When I shared these findings on social media, I received a wide range of reactions. Men in general disagreed, some were outright angry. This is rubbish. Women want tough guys. Women want the bad boys, was the overarching comment. So which one should we believe? Do women want the tough guys, the bad boys, as men seem to think, or do they want a kind and patient man? And I believe the two are not mutually exclusive. Let me illustrate. Most of us know Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. At least most of us are familiar with Dwayne Johnson's character in the movies. He's he's witty, and my goodness, is he tough. You know, he's the quintessential tough guy. But when he interacts with female characters, he's patient, gentle, and kind. That patience and kindness is what's most attractive to women. So now when I share the results with women, the most common reaction were along the lines of totally true, not a surprise at all. Okay, well, the reason kindness is such a puzzle because everyone on the first couple of dates is very, very kind. Rudeness or impatience only comes out weeks or months later. If everyone is kind on the first date, women are left to make decisions on other attributes like looks and wealth. So there, conjoint analysis was used to gain a bit of insight into what women look for in men. Of course, this doesn't mean that we have solved this million-year mystery called woman, but perhaps we gained an extra inch of an insight into their hearts. Maybe if anyone watches this video and wants to improve his chances or maybe a relationship they're in, not sure where to start, well, scientific data based on analyzing 200 women, this choice pattern says maybe you should start with kindness.